you gotta hear the latest about LK99. It's all over the tech world again. This time, however, the experiments have been confirmed. We're seeing it works. And simulations also say so. You can refer to the papers in the description to read for yourself. So now we're saying it could be as big a deal as the transistor was back in the day. That's pretty wild, huh? So when someone throws out a big claim like this, we always have to be skeptical, right? With big claims needs to come very significant evidence. So what's the real story behind this? Is it for real? And what kind of impact could it have? So let's put our thinking hats on and figure this out together. I'm Steven, and this is AI Positive. All right, so what are superconductors? Ever wonder why superconducting matters? Around 5% of the energy, we crank out in the US gets lost in the shuffle as it travels through power lines. Picture this. That's ample energy to fuel up all 7 Central American countries, and not just once. We're talking 4 times over. Now, throw superconductors into the mix, and you've got almost zero resistance, no energy losses, and darn near perfect energy transfer. That, my friend, could be a real game changer. And there's a lot more to say. So here's the history. A bunch of South Korean researchers just hit this breakthrough. They're claiming they've nailed a superconductor material, calling it LK99 after their own names. We'll get to that later. And get this, it's not some fancy lab conditions it only works under. Nope. They pulled it off at room temperature and regular old atmospheric pressure. How cool is that? Superconductivity was first discovered by Dutch physicist Heike Kamerlingh-Onnes. He made this groundbreaking discovery in 1911, so around when Einstein was doing his work. He observed the sudden disappearance of electrical resistance in mercury at extremely low temperatures. This phenomenon marked the beginning of the study of superconductivity in physics. So what's the deal with superconductors? First off, for something to be labeled a superconductor, 2 big things have to happen. 1, its electrical resistance totally disappears. And 2, it kicks out magnetic flux fields from inside the material. But don't stress, we're going to break down both these concepts for you further in the video. Let me share a bit more of the backstory on how we hit this breakthrough. In 1996, Sugbi Lee crossed paths with Ji-Hoon Kim, and by 1999, they got their first exposure to superconducting materials. LK99, Lee Kim 99. Lee wrapped up his PhD journey in 2004 and then went on to establish the Q Center, diving into quantum computing with direct connections to superconductor. How cool is that, the Q Center? By 2017, they were making strides toward a breakthrough and began fundraising in 2018. So they've been at this for 20 years. That's when Hwan Kwan, a young physicist professor, joined the team part-time as CTO. So this didn't come out of the blue. In 2019, they officially affirmed the functionality of room temperature superconductor and actively pursued Korean patents for manufacturing a low-resistance ceramic compound. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and they went full throttle, focusing intensely. Ultimately, they managed to isolate the superconductor, acquire its crystal composition, and conduct a thorough analysis of its characteristic structure. They tried to publish their work in Nature, but faced rejection. Instead, they were advised to go for a local publication. And of course, undergo peer review. It's the scientific process at its best. To enhance credibility on the global stage, they enlisted the expertise of Hwan Tok Kim, a research professor of physics at William & Mary in the United States. He joined the team to assist in conducting additional tests and to validate Lee and Kim's claims. In March 2023, when most of us became aware of this, Lee and Kim and the others submitted their international patent, and in July, they released all the papers that we saw over the internet. Now, new papers are confirming that it actually works. All right, let's check out how LK99 does its thing. It might get a bit techy, but I think you'll be fine. You be your own judge. The crucial element for this major breakthrough stems from an unconventional version of superconductivity. It's unconventional. That's what makes it so controversial and has so much opportunity. In a regular conductor, electrons not bound to atoms, free electrons, freely navigate through a crystal structure, bouncing off atoms and ions in their path. This creates resistance and makes them lose part of their energy, which is dissipated as heat and absorbed in the larger structure, the lattice. This is why resistivity is mostly tied to temperature, because the higher the temperature, the more ion motion there is, and the more collisions and losses there are. And this is why normally superconductors have to be cooled to near absolute zero. Ions are atoms that have too many or too few electrons. The commonly accepted explanation is the Bardeen-Cooper-Schrieffer theory, or BCS. It dates all the way from 1957. According to this theory, superconductivity arises from the formation of Cooper pairs of electrons with opposite spins, loosely held together by a weak attractive force. Unlike regular electrons, Cooper pairs can condense into a unified wave of superconducting electrons. Those paired electrons move through the material collectively, in contrast to the independent movement of multiple free electrons. Imagine someone guiding a group through a dark forest using a thin rope. This is akin to how Cooper pairs move, unlike the scenario where everyone is blindfolded and left to find their way through the forests by themselves. There's a catch with Cooper pairs. The bond keeping them together is fragile. Even minor thermal vibrations, and heat is just movement on a molecular scale. So even minor thermal vibrations in the crystal lattice, what keeps things together, even the vibrations from heat can break the bond between Cooper pairs. Hence, very low temperatures are necessary for conventional superconductors to work. In the context of LK99, superconductivity works more like teleporting from one side of the forest to the other, bypassing the challenges faced by Cooper pairs in traditional superconductor. LK99 does not rely on the fragile Cooper pairs. Instead, it utilizes a novel form of superconduction, termed superconducting quantum wells. This advancement allows LK99 to function at significantly higher temperatures than were previously considered feasible in superconductivity. Historically, superconductors only operated in proximity to absolute zero, necessitating the use of liquid helium for cooling. While there was a breakthrough with high-temperature superconductors, they still functioned at extremely low temperatures. Approximately negative 200 degrees Celsius. So manageable with liquid nitrogen instead of helium. In contrast, LK99 can operate at temperatures as high as 127 degrees Celsius. This temperature was previously deemed absolutely impossible, at least based on the old theory of those Cooper pairs we talked about. So how does LK99 achieve this? It all boils down to its chemical structure. LK99 is a solid made by replacing some of the lead atoms in lead apatite with copper atoms. Lead apatite is an insulator, and in structure, it forms a series of stacked columns of lead atoms surrounded by phosphate groups. Here's how the structure appears when viewed. You'll notice a circle comprising 6 light gray lead atoms and an outer circle consisting of pink phosphorus, and then another circle around it of dark gray lead atoms. When we substitute one of the outer lead atoms contributing to the framework of the structure with a copper atom, the entire arrangement contracts by approximately 0.5%. It's this contraction that makes the magic happen. The contraction occurs because copper is smaller than lead, resulting in some distortion of the overall structure. The shrinkage induces a stress on the internal column of lead atoms, the light gray ones, leading to the formation of those superconducting quantum wells along the column. This is like establishing a series of portals among the lead atoms within the vertical column. Electrons can now effortlessly move in and out through these portals via quantum tunneling, avoiding any obstacles, and as a result, demonstrating no resistance. So here's the deal. You gotta squeeze and twist the crystal structure to create these quantum wells. You can pull it off by chilling things or by cranking up the pressure, which we've done for a while, as we talked about in traditional superconducting. But, and it's a big but, when you ease off the pressure, the temperature climbs and your superconductor stops doing its cool superconducting things. What's the fresh approach? Mess with the structure from the inside by tossing in copper and ramping up the stress from the inside. That seems to be the trick that LK pulled off. And get this, it's not some crazy out of this world stuff that we've never heard of in physics and that requires some magic. These are tricks we've been pulling off for ages. When it comes to LK99, how effective is it as a superconductor? Keep in mind, not all superconductors are equal, and scientists categorize them based on various performance criteria. Firstly, there is naturally, because we're talking about superconductors, there's resistivity. Low resistivity is what defines a superconductor. However, contrary to some beliefs, it is not precisely zero. The benchmark for a material to be considered superconducting is a resistivity ranging from 10 to the power of -8 to 10 to the power -10. LK99 exhibits a maximum of approximately 4 times 10 to the power -9 ohm centimeters. Typically, it falls even lower at around 10 to the power of -10 ohm meters. The benchmark for a material to be considered superconducting is a resistivity ranging from 10 to the power of -8 to 10 to the power -10 ohm centimeters. LK99 exhibits a maximum of approximately 4 times 10 to the power of -9 ohms, so right in the middle. But typically, it falls even lower at around 10 to the power of -10 ohm centimeters. Very, very, very low resistivity. The second criterion to be a superconductor is critical temperature. This is a temperature at which superconductivity is lost, and that's what defines a high or low temperature superconductor, like we talked about before, the ones close to absolute zero or the ones, that are considered high temperature, which are still 100 degrees below zero Celsius. Lee and his team could only reach 127 degrees Celsius because their equipment had limitations, preventing them from going any further. Just imagine the industrial possibilities of a superconductor operating at temperatures above 127 degrees Celsius. One thing that puzzled me about superconductors is whether with no resistance you could generate an infinite current inside one. Could you potentially charge a car in a second? Well, it turns out the answer is no. Regardless of high or low currents, there's a voltage jump, indicating the loss of superconductivity due to quenching. This quenching occurs when the current inside the conductor generates a magnetic field that disrupts superconductivity. The current at which this happens is referred to as the critical current, or IC. Finally, let's talk about that famous Meissner effect that we've all heard of on the internet, or superconducting magnetic levitation. The research squad actually got a little coin-sized sample of LK99 to kind of float above a powerful permanent magnet. But we all saw the debunking on the internet, so maybe that was not really a demonstration of superconductivity. Nevertheless, check out the video where they're playing around with this tiny sample. You can see something is definitely pushing it up, but is it really floating? I'll let you decide. And let me know in the comments if you'd like to do a deep dive on this. So here's the deal with the Meissner effect. It happens because of these little loops we talked about, the little loops of electric current called screening currents on the surface of the superconductor. These currents act like tiny electromagnets, creating a magnetic field that perfectly cancels out the external one, making stuff levitate. And this is why superconductors are cool for those high-speed maglev trains in Japan. Now you might be thinking, what's the catch? Are these materials expensive? Maybe complicated processes are necessary? Maybe nasty chemicals? No. These superconductors are actually pretty simple and cheap to whip up. All you need is lead oxide, lead sulfate, copper powder, and phosphorus. The whole production process involves tossing these ingredients into a sealed quartz tube, cooking it in a lab oven at less than 1,000 degrees Celsius for about 4 days, and boom, done. Once you've got this not so fancy looking rock, you can use it as is or slap on some thin films using thermal vapor. Once you've got this not so fancy looking rock, you can use it as is or slap on some thin films on some other materials using thermal vapor deposition. A regular thing in industries like electronics, optics, and aerospace. It's seriously groundbreaking tech. But yeah, there are still loads of questions hanging around. We want to see way more replication. We want to see AI improve this. We want to see new materials based on these new ideas of shrinking inside the material using AI. And by the way, the applications of this in AI are gigantic because AI is super electric hungry. This is one of the most thrilling papers I've come across in recent memory. And I started off with a good dose of skepticism, as we should still have. The key issue was that the claims of the LK team weren't replicated. Yes, simulations said there should be something, but no one could replicate their findings. And that is the thing that changed. So, from what I've gathered, there's reason to be optimistic. Of course, we'll have to wait for confirmation from more labs around the world, but this is genuinely amazing. I'm eager to see how it all unfolds, and we'll surely delve deeper into this topic in future videos. If you have other ideas or details we might have missed, drop them in the comments. I hope you found this interesting, and if you thought it was cool, subscribe for more videos like this. If you like positive science news, please consider subscribing to this channel. And thank you, by the way, for finishing all the way till the end. It helps a lot. Until next time.